Is your SEO really generating new leads or sales for you? In today's episode, we'll explore that and how analytics can answer the question and more for you. Hello and welcome to the Radiant Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Ross. Joining me today is our co-host, Samantha Sato, and special guest, Pouya Zargar. Now, I am a SEO professional and web developer specializing in high conversion SEO optimized websites for small and medium businesses. And Samantha, you can introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Samantha. I'm part of Jason's team, and my role involves helping clients explore their marketing goals and connecting them with the relevant resources to strengthen their digital presence. I'm also doing my master's in business, and I'm excited to be joining this podcast as a co-host.
And so, Pouya, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I'm Pouya Zargar. I work in marketing strategy and analytics for a long while. Regarding SEO, my angle is making SEO measurable and decision ready so small and medium businesses can invest with confidence and get compounding results.
Awesome. And as both of us are in SEO and we both kind of attack it from a slightly different angle, I think this is going to make for an interesting point of conversation on this episode. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into marketing and data analysis?
Right. So I started my journey in marketing in 2013 when I shifted from engineering to marketing. And it started right there because I was fascinated by data. I was always good with math and statistics. And that was enough for me to get into what's going on in the world of marketing. SEO was one of the first things I learned, and it just accumulated from there, and it increased to what I'm doing right now, which is like all aspects of a marketing business consulting.
Which for me, the journey into this actually started a bit inverted. I started as web development and then learned SEO during the course of my professional career about a few years in. So it's kind of interesting how our career paths kind of parallel, yet running in opposite directions to each other. It's like we're traveling on the same road, each going in the different direction.
Right. But it's I look at it as a pyramid. The higher we go, the closer we get. So kind of like that.
Yeah. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your approach to it with the data analysis driven methodology that you use?
So for SEO specifically, I see it as a bridge that links business vision into a framework. So if we have a goal that defines a journey, that journey defines several events, which then we have some KPIs, and then based on that, we make some decisions. And if all of them are aligned, then we have a metric for our SEO to look at, especially from the attribution side of the data.
Right. And how important is it to understand your analytics, in marketing?
For me, it's analytics, and then analytics again, because I think if we make decisions without data, it's just our opinions and what we like. So what I like to do is always align the data with the vision of the business.
Yeah, and so when you tell the audience a little about what types of benefits they can typically expect to get out of getting out of this data analysis.
Right. For instance, as you mentioned in the tagline of the episode, when we look at sales or ROAS or these type of measurements as the outcome of SEO, it is rarely tracked like that, in my opinion. And it's not cost per click or CRO, or sometimes attribution is messy. But if we have a forced KPI onto SEO, it might lead to bad decisions. So looking at data and all the measurements and metrics that we have in the data can define a KPI ladder, if that's a correct term, that then can define our outcomes, whether it's revenue or qualified leads or indicators. And obviously we can always have diagnostics metrics to optimize that.
Could you provide some examples of how businesses might have made the mistake of setting wrong KPIs or metrics for themselves and how you helped them fix it?
Right. Actually, the challenge I faced a while back was that a business simply looked at ROAS for all the metrics. And if you're trying to improve your SEO, you shouldn't really look at your ROAS, because ROAS is a return on ad spend, and that doesn't link to SEO performance. And it took a while to convince the managers that this is not the KPI you should be looking at, and maybe we should be looking at other KPIs, although they still stuck to their ROAS as their divine metric. But
can you also define ROAS for anyone who might not be familiar with that term?
Sorry?
Can you define ROAS for anyone who might not be familiar with that term?
Right. The ROAS is return on ad spend. So for every dollar spent on ads, how much dollars is coming back?
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Because, in my experience, that is one huge barrier to people learning is when they encounter the misunderstood word. So it's always a good idea to make sure when we're using any kind of buzzword or jargon that we give people a definition of it, so that people that aren't in the same industry as us but wanting to make decisions are able to do so from a point of knowledge. Because that's what we're all about here on the Radio Business Podcast, is educating you on how to make smarter business decisions.
Right. So back to our KPI, I believe if the KPI definition is wrong, then every SEO decision after that is expensive theater. And if you are looking at real conversions, for example, in Google Analytics or Meta or other platforms, it should be real conversions, not just soft events. Like a contact page view is not a lead, or a form submission on a thank you page isn't always a lead or a revenue generating outcome. And if you have a CRM, a customer relationship management system, the gold standard is feedback and the qualification of that feedback that can become revenue. So these nuances, I think, are mainly missed for SEO, for CEOs or small business managers, because they have a vision, and that vision sometimes is a mismatch with these type of KPIs.
Yeah, certainly. And for those of you who might not be familiar with my work, I also do SEO. I focus more on the technical setup and content side of it. So from my end of it, having the type of data that driven analysis that you can provide helps me to then understand which contents are working and which contents aren't, and therefore where I should be focusing the efforts of my content strategies, and to be able to then deliver even better results for our clients.
Absolutely. I believe our work kind of complements each other rather than overlap.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely see great potential for, offering joint solutions for, to our clients there between my content-driven solutions and your data-driven solutions. And
absolutely, that creates like a, sorry.
Yeah, and because that's kind of where I, approach web development and SEO from, is analyzing their contents to look at how likely is it to create the desired behavior. Well, yours will analyze contents based on the statistical analysis of the data and the metrics and say, how has this converted there? So it's kind of like mine is a bit more of a intuitive predictive model, whereas yours is more of a data-driven reactive model of, now that we put it in the wild, let's test how it worked.
Right. I use, for example, when you are done with your part, I use MaxQDA to see what MaxQDA is a software for analyzing qualitative data. And I use that for thematic analysis to see what themes and messages are actually present in the website, and how do they actually perform. So when you use your keywords tools and like your content management system, that's where the clarity or emotional value analysis that we talked before, that's where the things come, and I analyze those things.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned emotional value analysis because one of the key tools that I use in emotional value analysis is actually a tool by the American Marketing Institute called the Headline Analyzer, which you feed any headline into it and it'll analyze the headline for its emotional impact value. Like, for example, the very first statement I said at the beginning of this episode that is probably what got your attention is why you're still watching now, which was, is your SEO really generating new leads or sales for you? Or, when I ran that through my headline analyzer tool, it gave it a 44.44 EMV rating. So I look at that and say, okay, so this is most likely going to resonate with people that are having those concerns. And so then they're
Which
going to
is so
want to,
important.
yeah,
Yeah, because human memory is so limited, but where we do manage to remember things, it's often associated with our emotions. So being able to have that kind of appeal, I'm sure helps a lot.
yes. And in fact, that grabber goes into part of the first part of what I call the marketing formula, which starts with, with get attention, which is what that grabber statement was. And the very second statement I made about how we have a solution coming up in this podcast episode, that's your engagement portion. Now we're in the middle of the educate portion where we're sharing what that solution is, what the benefits of it are, and how you'll be able to get better results. Now, that also shines through in SEO because, if you're getting, good conversion metrics, search engines like that, and they will rank your site more highly than other sites that maybe have, better keyword analysis, but they're not getting the conversions, or they're using all the latest, AI tools, but people are not, are just bouncing off the site. Then, that's might work for a while, but eventually, once the analytics come in and show that this site's just not producing results, most search engines are going to start kicking that site further back down the results again. So,
Right. I think it kind of links to Samantha. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the name of the theory was SOR, stimulus organism response. So there's an external stimulus, which is our website content. And then the organism is the audience. And then we expect them to have a response. So SEO is the key for that, to generate the response, whether they remember it, they click on it, they read through it. And as you mentioned, the whole concept of SEO, it kind of links to that.
Yeah, it's definitely one way to look at things. I can see how this theory would fit into an SEO context. Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And so there's, of course, a number of different tools you can use to measure analytics. Probably the most popular traditionally has been Google Analytics. However, you've mentioned a tool that you use. I also use a tool that measures SEO analytics. It's run by, it's a suite of solutions offered by a company called Mangools, which has KW Finder that I use for my keyword research. Which basically, what that does is it pulls out, when I feed it a keyword, it then pulls out that plus all related keywords that that are alternatives to the one that I started with. And it gives me statistical data about what are the top 10 websites ranking in each of those keywords right now, how competitive are each of those keywords, how popular are they, how many people are using that per month to do that search, what is the cost per click, which is especially important if you're doing search engine paid advertising or part of search engine marketing. But it's also useful in SEO because the more people are willing to pay for a keyword, the more likely it is that it's indicating, purchase intent, that people are getting close, are much closer to making that purchase. If they're using that, then they might be using another keyword. And I can
Correct,
give you a
correct. And
link to these suite of tools in the description down below for those of you who are interested in checking it out for yourselves. And could even, if there's enough interest, even arrange a demo of these tools to showcase them in more detail for anyone who wants to see that.
Right. Some CRM tools such as Zoho, they also have their own internal platforms for SEO measures, depending on what the business likes to use. These tools can be different, but at the end of the day, they serve one purpose.
Yeah, and there's also, if you're building in WordPress, there's a number of plugins that can either connect your WordPress site with external analysis tools such as Google Analytics, and there's also plenty of plugins that also can do the same thing internally within WordPress without needing any third-party connections. And so, so there's lots of options out there for you.
And it's growing rapidly. And there is also, I would like to point out the attribution alignment problem here, like from GA4, Google Analytics 4, Search Consoles, Ads, Meta, CRM tools. They all have a little slightly different attribution models. GA4 uses one methodology, Google Ads another, Meta another, and they are never really aligned. And that's also another challenge I see for especially small and medium businesses that they deal with, is that they want perfect matching and it never happens.
Yeah.
Which can, affect the way they make decisions, especially when they have different naming for tracking system is not consistent, and definition of conversions is not consistent. Reconciliation samples are viewed differently, maybe in different teams, even within one company. And the question is always why the numbers are different.
Yeah, for sure. And when you are measuring different things, then that creates a ton of problems. And I'm sure you can share some, horror stories of that happening in the wild through clients you've worked with.
It usually leads to scaling SEO budget or doubling down on the content clusters without any, real data-driven insight. So what I usually say is, without guessing, we can look at the data and see what actually works. So we don't have to use our intuition in that, because then we can see what actually is doing what we want and what's not. Another thing in the alignment layer is UTM parameters, and their inconsistencies always lead to different definitions, different conversions. Even monthly reports show discrepancies. So that alignment layering, I believe, is highly important for that type of mismatch.
Yeah, I also reckon data-driven decisions will always be superior to guesswork, because if it's going to be up to our intuition, then everybody in the room is going to have a different gut feeling, and then those are not going to converge either.
Yeah, that, or you're going to get the opposite of that, which is everyone in the room is going to default to groupthink, where they all just agree with each other. Though both of those are equally as common, and they're both equally as disastrous, because in one case everyone just all blindly follows the first suggestion that comes out. In the other, everyone's all arguing about wanting to do a different thing, and one of them leads you into the sheep herd mentality of just blindly follow the leader, even if the leader is acting like a lemming about to drop you off a cliff. And the other, you just get paralyzed with arguing and indecision. So
true. It's I would not always, but I generally have three categories that I look at in a different way, in a different light, which is if it's a cross-domain tracking for booking engines, if you're selling tickets or that type of business, and then call tracking for local intent. and privacy or consent effects, whether when there is a directionality for reliable data, not pixel perfect. And this attribution isn't about being right, it's about being consistent enough to make a repeatable decision, especially when it comes to SEO.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, SEO is a long-term strategy in your marketing mix. So you need to be consistently making, wise decisions in order for it to, get a return on that investment. And if your decisions
And
are
that kind of
all over the place, then you're just then you're going to be on that hamster wheel, just going around in circles, never moving up the rankings consistently.
yeah, and I
Like
would assume
jump
that
up
this
for temporarily, then
consistency.
you'll fall back down, and it'll just be kind of all over the place, never knowing what worked and what didn't, and why you went up one week and then down the next. Yeah, Samantha, you're starting to say something.
Yeah, I would think that this consistency would be important if and when businesses would like to scale.
Right, especially when it comes to UTM parameters, because when you scale, generally media buyers tend to have different approaches for UTM definitions. And when it becomes inconsistent, then you have now, you should expect imperfect data.
Yeah, and yeah, that is definitely something we want to avoid whenever possible. And so, what are some of the steps and strategies that you take in clients that you're working with in order to make sure that they're getting zeroing in on the right KPIs and the right data points to be able to understand, what their conversion funnel is doing, and as well as be able to identify what areas are people falling off the funnel, what areas is the funnel working smoothly and doing what it should be, what areas can you optimize it even further, even though it's already performing well. So why don't you walk us through a bit about your process for setting all that up?
Right. So after let's say the initial stage is to ensure that we have a mutual understanding of what KPI we should be looking at. And then the naming and tracking is consistent. So we have consistent UTM, consistent metrics across all the campaigns or websites or content that we are trying to track. And the cross-domain tracking is measured internally, not externally, because there are many platforms that they give you data, such as Meta. It gives you a lot of reports, but it's really unreliable. Last time I checked, it had 23% internal error, and it doesn't tell you that. You have to calculate that within your team. That's what I do initially. And then we create scenarios, especially for SEO. We create scenarios to see whether the rankings go up, whether traffic goes up, or revenue changes. And I always calculate the decay rate based on the keyword planning, as you mentioned, the whole system of keyword planning. After you've done that, now we need to check how it's performing. So that performance analysis comes in two ways. If it's performing well, we just diagnose where can we optimize it. If it's not performing well, I usually suggest A/B testing and something I like to call consecutive A/B testing. So your first A is always being tested against your last B. And in this way, you see every single word that has performed better than the other. At the end, maybe you have a very messy paragraph, but someone like you, Jason, can absolutely create what emotionally is valuable there. So I create a mess and then you clean it up.
Yeah, and then you create the systems that helps track and measure how it's performing, so
Track,
we can then
measure, and
optimize it,
repeat.
and yeah, so we can then keep going through cycling through optimizations. And glad you mentioned A/B split testing. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, that's a process where you test, let's say, two things against each other. Usually, you want to do is make one change on your, say, a landing page or an ad or something like that. Maybe you change a word in the headline or test two different headlines against each other. And the reason you want to limit it to testing one thing against a different variant of it is so that way you're isolating your data down to the only thing that can change performance is that one thing. So if you reword the headline, you know that the rewording of the headline is what caused performance to go up or down on your version B. And your version A would typically be the existing version you already have. Version B is the proposed change. And so, yeah, basically by doing that split test, you know whether that proposed change is going to improve or, or make worse your performance in your analytics.
Right. If I may emphasize on what you just mentioned, it is very important statistically, mathematically, just to look at one variable. And the variant should be different. This is also, I've seen with many clients that they have this problem. You can't test blue with a slightly less blue. That's not a real test. It should be blue against red or blue against green. What I mean is the test itself, A and B, should be variations of what you're saying, not similar keywords that are just like one word is changed. That's not going to give you the data you want. So the test should be different so you can reject one hypothesis and accept the other one. And also the second important thing in following up with what you said, Jason, is give your A/B tests time to gather enough data. Usually this goes intuitively and they don't calculate the sample size. What I do is also I'll calculate the sample size that you need for an A/B test to make statistical sense or significance. This is also very important because if you look at 50 rows of data and then compare them, that's not statistically correct. Depending on the test measure, you need to calculate what is the minimum sample size that you need to make a statistical test. If there is a decision that has to be taken very quickly, then we can bootstrap or simulate the data, but that's rare. Usually we have like 1 week, 2 weeks to give to the test, so we have enough real data to make a decision upon it.
Yeah, and that actually also touches on another useful point, as well as if if your data is, let's say, within 5 percentage points of each other, then usually that's what we would call within the margin of error, meaning that at that point you really can't make an informed decision on is version A or version B better. Essentially, they're both about the same, and so at that point you then either need additional, to run the test long enough for any changes to start to metastasize, or there is no difference, so there's really no point in making the change. At a certain point, you have to make that
and
decision.
then we go back to the KPIs that we were talking about before. That's where they come in, so we can check how the changes are moving within the A/B test. And I also like to mention the time lag or time decay, because the test, usually when you start the test, you have more data, you have more effectiveness of the test, and then it decays as time passes, unless we do constant changes, which is not good for A/B testing. So that's also sometimes is missed especially in the smaller businesses where there are less people to look at the data. So that decay rate, it also becomes important with regard to what you said.
Yeah, and with smaller businesses, they also tend to have smaller budgets, so it can also take longer sometimes for them to accumulate enough data points to reach a statistically significant amount. That was a real tongue twister.
Right. It's the sensitivity of every dollar spent is more for smaller businesses. So these kind of decisions are more important.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes even more important, actually, to A/B split test, because you need to be optimizing for the version that's going to give you the best possible results. And if you're going to make a change, you need to have the data to know that that change is actually going to improve things and isn't just going to be just a different wording of the same outcome or worse. And obviously, worse is the thing that you don't want. You want to make sure that you're testing and measuring to avoid that.
Right. These are common blockers, as you mentioned, like weak offer clarity. Sometimes they forget to really bolden their CTAs, or they have slow pages. These kind of things are less looked at when you have a smaller business because you don't have enough time to look at every aspect. Sometimes the form is confusing or the trust signal is missing. There's no social proof. Um, Everything that you mentioned is linked to that. So, yeah,
Yeah, and one
like
of
a
the
mini
things,
audit.
yeah, one of the things that I do actually is conversion analysis of websites, where I'll look over your website, all the four marketing elements. We haven't mentioned the fourth one yet. That's which you just mentioned actually, and that's your call to action, your offer. And basically, what I do is I analyze how each of those four things is implemented on your website or your landing page. Plus, the fifth thing I look at is general web design and development best practices. And one of the things that I have found so often is, they'll analyze a website, they'll have good headlines, they'll have, good content that helps educate people on what the value and the benefits of their offering is, but they forget to make the offer, and that creates what I call a selling the services of your competition website, because you've sold them on the idea of what you offer, but then they don't convert because they don't know how to. And what ends up happening then is they'll then go to the next best option that comes along that kind of says, the right things, might be more generic, but it's kind of reaffirming what they've already learned. But they have a good offer in there. And now the person goes to the one that presented them with the what step do I take next?
Absolutely. This is very similar to my experience. In my experience, most businesses don't have a real SEO problem. They have a measurement and offer clarity problem. And they confuse it with SEO problems. Like heat maps and scroll depth and time spent, those are good measures to look at to understand where the attention drops. But site speed, core web vitals, and offer clarity, those are the real conversion metrics that fail. And for example, internal linking is a conversion tool, not just an SEO tool. But most small businesses, they think it's just an SEO tool. It's a conversion tool also.
Yeah. In fact, that's actually an interesting one that just reminds me of, one, of a client that I worked with. In fact, she was actually the first person I did one of my conversion reports for, that then went on to become a client. And I was doing SEO for her from about, halfway through 2019 through till 2023, when she then chose to reinvest the SEO budget from that business into a new business she was launching. But during that time, one of the things we identified is the about page, was a funnel drop off point where people are falling off her funnel. When I then analyzed the about page, I noticed that there was no internal linking to then direct them over to a sales page or a booking page or anywhere where they could then go to a conversion, so they get to the about page and then just bounce off the website. And so then I applied internal linking from the about page to pages that could then lead them towards the next step of booking an appointment with them. And suddenly that page started converting
Yeah,
because,
I call what you said the 3-click format or framework. So every page you land on, there should be at least 3 clicks, which what you said, like to roll back or guide you back towards something. Maybe it's a sale or a booking. Um, yeah, that's also a call to action, which is often missed or forgotten about.
yeah. And the call to actions that I always recommend are a low risk or no risk offer. Like the thing I was just talking about with the conversion reports, that's one of my offerings, and I don't charge for them. So, by doing that, I eliminate the risk. Now, speaking of offers, we've been talking a lot about solutions to your problem of not being able to track, test, and measure and track what your website and your marketing campaign performances are. So, how could people that are wanting to get that help from you and get a hold of you in order to to start that process with you?
Right. It's the whole topic that we're talking about. SEO becomes compounding, if that's the correct term, because every piece of content is actually teaching us what customers value or respond to. So when most businesses disregard this bit is that when they go to scaling their budget and spending money on things that are not really converting. So the best SEO strategy, not best, but one of the best SEO strategies is the one that you can measure and maintain for at least a year. That's what I offer.
Yeah. And so, so what will be the next step that a person could take in order to start working with you?
Right. I have a checklist. I make it very general for the sake of buying time and conversation parsimony. First is to track one primary conversion that equals to the real business outcome that you're looking for. Whether it's lead, booking, purchase, whatever that is, it's just one primary conversion. It avoids confusion. Then connect Search Console or any other tool that can monitor your query groups or keywords, as Jason uses those tools for understanding bidding and how people use the keywords. And then the audit feedback. Create an audit feedback that it's an internal loop, and it only loops for intent. And after that, we can then reconcile with other tools such as analytics, BI dashboards, CRM tools once per month or bi-weekly to build trust in the numbers. And then run experiments for each change that you are thinking about.
The question I'm asking though is what's the next step a person can take that wants to work with you to be able to, in other words, what's your
with
offer?
Me, I thought you're asking about the whole SEO thing. I'm deep into the SEO, sorry. With me, for me, you can always contact me on my website. There is a direct link to my email. There is a form you can submit if you have any issues. And I'm easily found on social media as well. I'm usually very friendly.
LinkedIn, if that works for you.
Sure, LinkedIn. And my first hour of consulting is always free. And I don't charge for that. If we come to an agreement, then we can talk about other things, the damage.
So that would be your risk elimination offer, to go back to the 4 elements of marketing.
If they see that I'm aligned and I understand their business and we both understand each other and I can actually deliver what they seek, then we can go.
Exactly. So the links that he mentioned to his website and to his LinkedIn profile, those will be in the description down below. And since I mentioned it earlier in this episode, I'll also include a link so you can check out, the Mangool's SEO tools as well. That will be also in the description down below. And again, if enough people ask about it, we can always come back on to do another episode where we go over that tool set and show you how I use it in SEO. And
sure. And I can just, if I may, I want to mention one free tool which everybody can use. I think you use them better in your method. Is Clarity from Microsoft. It's a free tool for heat map tracking and time spent on every section of your website. It's free, at least for now, so it can be used.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, that also reminds me, there's also the headline analyzer tool we talked about earlier. I'll also include a link to that as well, so that you can test that out and see how that helps you to write better headlines.
It has helped me, definitely.
All right, so with that, it's been great having you on, Pouya. It's definitely been a great episode. I think we've shared a lot of extremely valuable information with people. So do you have any final closing remarks?
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for inviting me. As I said, for SEO specifically, I think the most reasonable approach is to be able to measure and repeat decisions. That's all I have to say.
All right, awesome. So this has been the Radiant Business Podcast. And before you go, make sure that you give us a like button to let us know that this episode helped you out, as well as give us a comment, for feedback. To let us know if you'd like to learn more about the search keyword research tools we mentioned, or the headline analyzer, or any of those tools. And we can always come back and do a bit more of a presentation style podcast episode in the future, as well as make sure to, if you're on Rumble, make sure you follow us. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye for now.